Now, U.S. officials confirming to CNN that Iran test-fired a defensive surface-to-air missile yesterday. This comes, of course, just days after the regime launched an anti-ballistic missile, which theoretically could be outfitted with a nuclear warhead. The Trump administration has said Iran is officially, quote, on notice, and President Trump has declared all options on the table. Let's bring in former U.S. Senator and Democratic vice presidential candidate Joe Lieberman. He leads an advocacy group called United Against Nuclear Iran. It opposed the 2015 nuclear deal. The group has received funding from supporters of Israel, including billionaire Sheldon Adelson. Senator Lieberman, thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it. First, I know of your deep and abiding respect and friendship with Senator John McCain, and I just want to get your thoughts on President Trump slamming him for his criticism of the Yemen raid. He said McCain should not say whether a mission is a success or a failure, and that he is emboldening the enemy by doing so.
Yeah. So I must, by full disclosure, as you suggested, say that in any fight between McCain and anybody else, I'm going to be with McCain.
Right.
So, but beyond that,
and in fact, you endorsed him over then Senator Obama.
I did. He's really a dear friend, and I think a great public servant. Second thing I want to say is, take me back to the old days when a president who disagreed with a senator would pick up the phone and say, "John, come on down here. Let's have a drink. Let's have a cup of coffee," and maybe they'd yell at each other about it, but it wouldn't be a tweet to 40 million people, because at some time before long, President Trump's going to have to call Senator McCain for support on something in the Armed Services Committee or tax reform or whatever it is. On the merits, look, war is hell, and there's always disappointments and failed operations in war. In this case, the administration says it gained some intelligence, it gained some other movement forward. So, okay, it wasn't a total failure, but you can't call it a success either, because we lost a soldier, others were wounded, and some bystanders, innocent civilians, were killed. So, again, I wish more people around here were talking to each other rather than speaking through tweets or even through cable news.
Let's talk about Iran. You take a little shot at cable news there. Talk about Iran. The Trump administration has introduced additional sanctions against the country, and they have not ruled out the use of force. Do you think military action could ever be a correct course of action when it comes to Iran?
It could be, but boy, that really would be the last alternative. But you know, as we all know, 3 weeks into the Trump administration, a lot has changed in Washington. One of the things that's changed that I think people haven't noted enough is an American policy toward Iran. The Trump administration is a sea change from where the Obama administration was. Obama administration negotiated this agreement. We, my organization, United Against Nuclear Iran, feel it was a very bad agreement in many ways. President Trump said the same. He said that he would tear up the agreement when he became president. Now it sounds like he won't do that, and that's okay with me. I think the important thing is what he's done. General Flynn, National Security Advisor, warned the Iranians not to take risks here, assuming that there'd be no response from President Trump, as there was in some cases to provocative action by Iran by President Obama. And then they tested the missiles, and the Trump administration slammed economic sanctions on them. I think what we've got to do now, and I'm really encouraged that the Trump administration will do it, is aggressively monitor this existing agreement, push quickly if there are violations of it, which there will be by the Iranians, sanction them under the continuing sanctions for all the rest of their behavior, which hasn't changed since the nuclear agreement. I think people in the Obama administration felt if we negotiate this agreement on nuclear weapons, which incidentally didn't stop their nuclear weapons program,
put it on hold,
just delayed it, then they'll become better actors, they'll become more civilized.
You don't see any evidence of that?
No, they still are the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. They still brutally suppress the human rights of their citizens, and they're spreading their influence all over the region, bringing death. So we ought to keep the pressure on them. And if the occasion comes where we feel that there's no hope, then we have to pull out of that agreement and hope that we can convince our allies, certainly in Europe, to do the same.
What do you think of President Trump's travel ban, the halt of the refugee program, the halt perhaps indefinitely to taking in Syrian refugees, and then the suspension of any travel from 7 majority Muslim countries that the Obama administration has designated countries of concern for national security reasons. Obviously, this is being used against the U.S. By our enemies, by American enemies, trying to gin up the idea that the United States is anti-Muslim.
Right.
And I believe the Ayatollah said that President Trump has revealed the true face of America.
Yeah. So let me say first that I would never judge an American action by its popularity elsewhere in the world. It's a factor, but if we're doing something that we feel we need to do to protect our security, then sometimes you have to make people elsewhere unhappy. In this case, I wish the Trump administration had done this in a more focused way. What do I mean? Instead of banning everybody from this series of countries, closing off the country to refugees, which is not our history, I wish President Trump had said to General Kelly at Homeland Security, whoever else he wanted to involve, give me a program that I can put into action as quickly as possible that will do what the president has called extreme vetting.
Right.
Make sure that wherever you're coming from in the world to the United States, if there's any evidence at all that you want to do us harm, that you're a terrorist, you're a radical Islamist terrorist, then you're going to be kept out of here. Incidentally, one of the things that we've always worried, and I've been active in this field for a long time, is that the terrorists would begin to come in from other countries, even from our European allies.
Right.
And they wouldn't all be Muslims, or if you'll forgive me, they wouldn't all be from Arab countries. They might be Europeans who might have become Muslims, maybe even not. Maybe we're just sympathizers with the radical cause. So I think this was, I think it cost America more than it saved us in security.
Senator Joe Lieberman, it's always good to see you. Don't be a stranger.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks for
Good to
stopping
see
by.
you.
Really appreciate it.
All the best.